G'day World Wide Web, Lew Dub with the Melbourne Cup Preview. What a week and a half it's been. Durston, Loft, Makram, Don De Vie all cancelled by Racing Victoria's vets. Imagine connections of Loft all the way from Germany for that. Hats off to the vets though. You've saved the life of a horse. What will they do if 3 horses fall over in the rain tomorrow though? Anyway, let's get on with the world favourite Melbourne Cup Preview here on Lew Dub's Personal Best, the unofficial Melbourne Cup channel. Number 1 in the 2022 Melbourne Cup is Gold Trip. The 5.5-year-old Antire is trained by Kieran Maher and David Eustace, who have a great reputation with stayers and 1.5-mile types. Throughout this preparation, Gold Trip has been there or thereabouts. Most impressive was his second in the Caulfield Cup, and we can't forget or deny that he was unlucky in the Cox Plate. Okay, just explaining the line graph on screen, it's pretty simple. The blue dots represent the horse's finishing position in relation to the winner. The orange line is in the winning position, so the further below the orange line the dot is, the further behind the winner said horse is. And if the dot is above the line, that means the horse won. You also get an idea of how far the horse won by too. Okay, let's take a closer look at Gold Trip. Looking at his progress throughout the spring, he has always been close, even over the 1500 metres way back in July in his first start. In his career to date, the furthest he's gone is 2400 metres. In France, he raced over 2400 metres twice for 2 third-place finishes at Group 1 level. On his Caulfield Cup run, you have to believe he will be there when the whips are cracking. Ooh, looks like my graphics guy has made a bit of a mistake there. I think the Australian bloodstock colours are blue with a white horseshoe, mate. Not a hammer and sickle. What's that? What's that on the screen? Looks like a Twitter. What? So that tweet, yep. That tweet came from Australian bloodstock boss. What's that say? 100% happy to cut the selfish loose. Those that don't feel that they have a duty to be part of the solution and get vaccinated, lock them in and let us get back to living. Yeah, yikes. I get it. Yeah, he's a bit of a commie. We've seen him in a big field with plenty of horses around him, and he should settle in a place in the first half of the field. He's got experienced jockey Mark Zahra on board, who is riding just below his career average, but absolutely clocking it at Flemington. Ignore Gold Trip at your peril. Number 2 is 5-year-old mare Duais, a Queensland Oaks winner back in 2021 and winner of the Group 1 Tancred over 2400 metres in April of this year. Unfortunately, she seems to have left her autumn form behind. Her run in the Turnbull was particularly disappointing. Looking at her preparation progress, you could make an argument that she is getting closer. But still, when watching the Caulfield Cup, it must have been disheartening for connections to see Montefilia run past her so easily. Stats show that a heavy track will not be good for her, but on the bright side, she has Hugh Bowman on board, who is riding in better than average form. His last winner was at Randwick on the 26th of October. He's famous for his partnership with Winks, and Bowman has a massive 104 Group 1 wins. But Huey is still chasing his first Melbourne Cup win. Number 3, Knight's Order, is a 7-year-old gelding. He's already picked up a Group 1 win over 2 miles earlier this year in the Sydney Cup. He won the 2-mile Brisbane Cup in 2021 as well. He's got a good record on soft and heavy ground, plenty of experience with his training team of Waterhouse and Bott as well. Looking at his progress throughout this preparation, he shocked everyone by winning over a mile at Group 2 level, but since then he's done a little wrong also, never finishing more than 1.7 lengths back, even at Group 1 and unsuitable distances. Jockey Tim Clark is on board. Clark has had success with Knight's Order, notably in the Brisbane Cup, where he carried 55.5 kilos back in 2021. Clark is riding in better than average form, but some, including me, have questioned the way he failed to keep a high tempo in the Caulfield Cup and the Turnbull. Knight's Order's strength is his stamina, and if he's to win, it will be by draining the sprinting capacities of his opponents. Working against Knight's Order is the 55.5 kilos he's going to carry, as his win in the Sydney Cup was while carrying 4 kilograms less. Also of concern is the likelihood of other frontrunners, Serpentine and Point Nepean, making things very difficult for him. Nevertheless, this fella is hard to ignore with his strong record over the distance and on rain-affected ground. Number 4, Montefilia, is a 5-year-old mare who has won at Group 1 level over 2,000 metres and 2,400 metres. I remember trainer David Payne speaking about her in mid-2021, saying she was going to be a Cups horse. She has had a relatively limited prep with just 3 runs. She was disappointing in the Hill Stakes over 2,000 metres on heavy ground, but she really bounced back in the Caulfield Cup with probably the most eye-catching run of all. There are definitely questions about her ability to run a strong 2 miles, though her grandfather on the sire side is Teofilo, a prolific stamina sire. The other question is around her racing pattern. She's likely to be well back, and that old racing cliche tells us, avoid the rear on heavy ground. Maybe the track won't be so bad. Anyway, jockey Jason Collett is riding below his career strike rate this year, and the 31-year-old has only had 7 rides at Flemington in his career, and that's for 0 wins. It will need to be his best ride on Tuesday. Number 5, Numerian, is trained by Annabelle Neesham. I believe it's her first Melbourne Cup runner. This 6.5-year-old Irish gelding has some decent form on heavy ground, and though he had a pretty cushy run and still only finished 5th in the Caulfield Cup, he was only 1.2 lengths away. This prep, he's only had 3 runs, though his previous prep finished up in June, and that was an impressive win in the Group 2 Q22 over 2,200 metres. You can see by looking at the line graph, he's never far away, but there's a big question mark over his ability to go a strong 2 miles. His furthest run was the Caulfield Cup, and as mentioned before, he had a pretty economical run, but started to fade in the shadow of the post. Jockey Tommy Berry is one of our premier jockeys with 36 Group 1 wins and 2 wins at Rose Hill over the weekend. Berry does have a pretty poor record at Flemington, but a final positive for Numerian is that on-pace racing pattern of his. If it is extremely wet, that's the place to be. Number 6, Without a Fight, is a 5-year-old Irish-bred gelding. He's one of the foreign raiders out from the UK. Trained by father and son team Simon and Ed Crisford, this fella has only finished out of the placings 3 times. He's raced over 2,800 on 2 occasions for 2 wins. Of concern, though, is his lack of experience on heavy ground, though he has got a solid record on soft ground with 2 wins and 2 placings from 5 starts. His line graph displays all 6 of his runs this year, with him starting off in March at Dubai. You can check out my Melbourne Cup contender video of him if you want to get a real close eye on him. Since returning to UK tracks in May, he progressed well with a 3.5 length win in the Group 3 Silver Cup. It should be said that Silver Cup winners don't usually fit the bill as Melbourne Cup winners. See Mount Athos in 2012 when he won the Silver Cup by 4 lengths, carrying 63 kilograms. That being said, this is a weaker than average Melbourne Cup, and back in 2012 Mount Athos managed a 3.25 length 5th, carrying 54 kilograms. Anyway, Without a Fight will have the services of leading UK jockey William Buick. Buick has a career strike rate of 18%, and this season in the UK he's been riding at 29%. To bring that back into focus though, Buick had 8 rides on Derby Day at Flemington and failed to win a race. If it isn't too heavy and Without a Fight jumps well enough to secure a position in the first third of the field, he will be a genuine contender. Number 7, Camorra, is a 5.5-year-old gelding. Another of the foreign raiders, though he is set to race in Australia from this race onward under the stewardship of Ben and JD Hayes, the local trainers. Connections became interested in racing in the Melbourne Cup when Camorra won the Group 2 Curragh Cup. The Curragh Cup was won by Twilight Payment on his way to Melbourne Cup glory in 2020. But looking at Camorra's progress this year, you can see his next start was a disappointing 8th in the Irish St Leger. Whether that below par performance was down to the yielding track is not clear, but Camorra has won on soft ground in the past. The line graph illustrates just how Camorra mixes his form. On the positive side, Camorra has local jockey Ben Mellam on board, who is riding better than his career average this year, and Mellam has a healthy strike rate at Flemington. Camorra is also likely to take a position in the first third of the field. 8 Deauville Legend is another of the foreign raiders. The 3.5-year-old gelding is favourite for the Melbourne Cup. James Ferguson trains Deauville Legend at Newmarket in the UK. Though he only started training in 2019, he had spent time under the tutelage of Charlie Appleby with the Godolphin setup. Deauville Legend had everyone paying attention when he surged home for second in the Group 3 Gordon Stakes before becoming Melbourne Cup favourite after winning the Group 2 Great Voltager. Melbourne Cupophiles may be aware that Cross Counter ran a close second in the Great Voltager before winning the 2018 Melbourne Cup by a length to Marmello. Before we make him a certainty, keep in mind Deauville Legend will have to be better than Cross Counter, as See the Stars gelding is being asked to carry 4 kilograms more than Cross Counter. Throw in the fact that Deauville Legend has never raced on soft, let alone heavy ground, his 7-2 odds look a little risky. The Legend will be ridden by Aussie jockeying legend Karen McAvoy. The 42-year-old has only won 81 Group 1s and 3 Melbourne Cups. But don't worry, McAvoy will be hungry. A 4th Melbourne Cup win would put him down in the history books as equalling the most Melbourne Cup winning rides alongside Bobby Lewis and Harry White. The biggest threat to Deauville Legend is the weather.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Project Cirrus is the first official attempt to modify a hurricane. It was run by General Electric with the support of the U.S. military. The official theory was that by changing the temperature outside the eye wall of a hurricane, which they did by seeding the clouds with various compounds such as silver iodide, a decrease in strong winds will result. On October 13, 1947, Project Cirrus targeted a hurricane heading out to sea. Approximately 180 pounds of dry ice was dropped into the clouds. The crew then reported a pronounced modification of the cloud deck, and the hurricane abruptly changed direction and made landfall near Savannah, Georgia. Irving Langmuir, who pioneered General Electric's atmospheric research department and admitted that the project was about learning how to weaponize the weather, also claimed the reversal of the hurricane had been caused by Project Cirrus. But the government denied it for 12 years. And in 1965, Project Storm Fury had targeted Hurricane Betsy for seeding. On that day, the storm immediately changed direction and made landfall in southern Florida. Congress blamed it on Project Storm Fury, but the government claimed that the hurricane shifted before they ever had a chance to seed it. And after 2 months of congressional hearings, the project was allowed to continue. In 1997, U.S. Defense Secretary William Cohen said that we have enemies capable of altering the climate and setting off earthquakes and volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. And so controlling the weather seems to be a very real thing. And while the media lies to you, the government has placed gag orders on employees of the National Weather Service.
Number 9 is a 6-year-old gelding Stockman. He's trained by Joe Pride, who had a big win with Private Eye on Saturday. Stockman won at listed level over 2,400 metres in 2021, and earlier in 2022, Stockman won the Group 2 Sky High Stakes over 2,000 metres and backed that up with a shock second in the Weight for Age Tancred over 1.5 miles. His next start was somewhat of a failure in the 2 Mile Sydney Cup, finishing 13 lengths 7th in a field of 19. Connections are back for another crack at 2 miles though, as many have pointed out that back markers were not suited on the heavy ground that was served up in the Sydney Cup. This preparation he has progressed well with a solid 4th in the Group 1 Metropolitan before an encouraging 1.8 lengths win in the 2,600 metre ATC St Leger. His last start saw him step back to 2,000 metres and he looked far from disappointing, carrying 59.5 kilos, but doing his usual thing, making up ground over the final stages. Young Sam Clipperton will be riding Stockman. He's partnered Stockman for all of his best results this year. Clipperton has been receiving plaudits in recent times, but he's only had 3 rides at Flemington and so needs to be his very best with Stockman being a back marker, likely having to weave through tiring runners in the rain. Number 10 is Vow and Declare. The 7-year-old gelding will have to make history if he is to win. Vow and Declare is proven over 2 miles as he won the Melbourne Cup in 2019, but no horse that won the race more than twice won with a gap of 3 years between. Most horse racing aficionados had given up on Vow and Declare, as from mid-autumn of 2020 he did not resemble the motivated winner from 2019. Vow and Declare did not run a place in his 9 starts from March 2020 to September of 2021. After a 10-month spell, it seems Denny O'Brien, the trainer, has been able to trigger V&D's competitive spirit again, with the old chestnut running an eye-catching 3rd in a 2,500 metre race on the 10th of September. Since then, he's done nothing wrong in the Bart Cummings and the Caulfield Cup. His form says he's better suited to a dry track, so take heed of that. He's to be ridden by Blake Shin. This season, Shin is riding better than his career strike rate, though that is offset by his 10 starts at Flemington this year, yielding 0 wins. Number 11 is young Werther. The 5-year-old gelding showed lots of promise in his 3-year-old season, running 3rd in the Victoria Derby and 2nd in the ATC Derby. He only had 3 runs as a 4-year-old, ending with a disappointing 8th in the 2021 Caulfield Cup. He's only won 1 from 14 starts, and he had every chance recently in the 2,000 metre Turnbull Stakes. He was far from disgraced in the Cox Plate 3 weeks later, but I have concerns over the stretch to 3,200 metres from this limited 3-race prep. He's fortunate enough to have the services of Damien Lane on board, who is riding at better than his career strike rate. Another thing in young Werther's favour is his ability to race on or near the speed. Number 12 in this year's Melbourne Cup is foreign raider Huyamao. The 3.5-year-old colt will be racing with Gay, Waterhouse and Adrian Bott from this time on, and he came into reckoning with his 2nd in this year's Epsom Derby. Looking at his progress on the line graph, the Epsom Derby was his 3rd start. In his next start, he ran 2.1 lengths 3rd to New London and Deauville Legend. Then he went and won over 2,800 metres at Group 3 level before coming back to earth in the Group 1 St Leger at Doncaster. You can see he finished a long way behind the winner Eldarov, but more worryingly, he finished 6.5 lengths behind New London, which could indicate a regression of about 4 lengths since they previously met in July. If you can forgive that run, you can definitely find reason to back Huyamao, as he has won on soft ground and placed on the heavy stuff. Additionally, he gets Craig Williams as jockey. Williams is currently riding at better than his career strike rate and riding at 18% at Flemington. He actually picked up 2 wins over the weekend at this track. Number 13 is Serpentine. This runner will actually wear the famous navy blue and white of Lloyd Williams, so that pick may be a little misleading. He's expected to race alongside or in front of the race's other obvious leader, Knight's Order. There is a very real risk that Serpentine and Knight's Order cannibalise one another. The 5.5-year-old gelding scraped into the Melbourne Cup by finishing second in a weak Lexus Archer Stakes over the weekend. Looking at his progress throughout the prep, he did make a vast improvement in the Bart Cummings, though he finished well back in the Moonee Valley Gold Cup. You would have to believe the step up to Group 1 level will find him out, as his drop in weight from his last two races is not that significant. He is being steered by ex-jumps jockey John Allen. The Irishman has picked up 17 Group 1 wins and is currently riding on par with his career average. Allen did have a win on Derby Day, but he and Serpentine will need the luck of the Irish to win. Number 14 is Daqiansweet Jr. The 5-year-old gelding comes into the Melbourne Cup with a Group 2 win over 3,200 metres in the Adelaide Cup and a formidable third on heavy ground in this year's Sydney Cup. Looking at his progress, it seems as though he is definitely more suited to the longer distances. It is one of them light preps though, with only 3 runs leading into the Cup. Daqiansweet Jr. will be ridden by Daniel Moore. Moore has had 4 Group 1 wins and is currently riding just slightly below his career strike rate. He's had 14 rides at Flemington this season with no wins to date. If the track gets too heavy though, it would be very brave to ignore Daqiansweet Jr. Number 15, Grand Promenade, is a 6.5-year-old gelding. Statistically just the right age, but he has been struggling to find his best form. Grand Promenade ran in the Melbourne Cup last year for a gallant 5th, running much of the race 3 wide without cover. But he went into last year's race with winning form. It looked as though he may have been unlucky in the Herbert Power at Caulfield in early October this year. That was the 3rd run in his prep, but he then failed in the Moonee Valley Gold Cup next. Was it due to unsuitable heavy ground? Grand Promenade is also using a different racing pattern to that of last year when he was most successful. He was a leader or on-pace runner. Now he is racing further back in the field. There is the possibility that training team Mar and Eustace are doing that to help him run a stronger 2 miles though. There are many questions around Grand Promenade. He has got an informed jockey in Harry Coffey aboard. He's riding well above his career strike rate, and the 27-year-old has had 7 winners since the 24th of October. Number 16, Arapaho, is a 6.5-year-old import from France. He's been racing in Australia since April of 2021. He's had plenty of success at shorter trips of 1,800, 2,000 and winning the Grafton Cup in July this year over 2,350 metres. This preparation he has been racing since April, with the biggest break between races a gap of 3 weeks. He's plenty fit, but he'll need to step up in class and distance. In his longest race, the 2,600 metre ATC St Leger, he did pretty well, running 1 3/4 lengths second to Stockman on soft ground. He's got Rachel King on board. She's a successful Sydney rider, and at 32 years of age, King looks to be at the peak of her powers. She's had 16 rides at Flemington for 0 wins though. She does have a reputation as a good front-running rider, but her mount is capable of settling on pace or back in the field. This broadcast is coming to you from the lands of the Lake Macquarie people. We acknowledge and pay our respects to all Lake Mackians, black, white or brindle, past, present and emerging. We inherited this land after the sacrifice of much blood and treasure, and shall honour those that came before us by upholding traditional Australian values. Respect the land, be respectfully sceptical of authority, and give a fair go to all. Number 17, Emissary, squeezed into the race off a win in the Geelong Cup. He's a 5.5-year-old gelding that had his first run in Australia in September of 2021. He had only limited success last year, but in this preparation he has found winning form. Looking at his line graph, he has had 4 runs leading into the Cup, which has been a successful ploy for locally trained hopes in recent years. Plenty of mileage in his legs with 2 1.5-mile races in October. He comes into the race with a 13-day break between starts. Working against Emissary is the soft track conditions. He does prefer a dry track. That was the kind of track he raced on for his Geelong Cup victory. Young Patrick Maloney is riding. He's currently riding at level with his career best stats of 10%. His record at Flemington is lower than his overall average. And also consider that Emissary is likely to be racing midfield or further back. Number 18, Lunar Flare, is a 7-year-old mare that comes into the Melbourne Cup in career best form. Her preparation looks very similar to that of Prince of Penzance in 2015. She won the Moonee Valley Gold Cup in 2021 and had just one run in July before getting into the meat of her spring preparation this year. She's been close all through this prep with a win on good ground in the Bart Cummings at this track in early October. The line graph indicates a dip in form in the Moonee Valley Gold Cup, but that's an optical illusion. She finished second and well ahead of some of her Melbourne Cup rivals. On her side is an adaptable race pattern that allows her to race anywhere from just off the pace to back in the field. She's had plenty of success on soft ground and placed in heavy going in her last start. The biggest question is whether she'll be able to go another 800 metres. Her sire is a Melbourne Cup winner, Fiorente. She has Kiwi jockey Michael D on board. He's currently riding at just above his career strike rate, and the 26-year-old is having a really good trot at Flemington, where he won the Derby over the weekend. 19, Smokin Romans had his career best win 2 starts back in the Group 1 Turnbull Stakes over 2,000 metres. After that performance, he was sent out as favourite for the Caulfield Cup. In that race, Smokin Romans raced below expectations though. Some say he was cramped for space in the home straight and thus couldn't get going. He has won on soft and heavy ground. That is in his favour. He won plenty of 1.5 mile races in 2021, but he finished off that prep being destroyed over 2,800 in the listed Bagot on New Year's Day. This prep he's had 2 wins, but his dip in the Caulfield Cup still takes some explaining. The step up to Group 1 at a longer distance was what I thought would trouble him, and his end result does indicate that. He does have top-ranking jockey Jamie Carr on board. She's riding at career best 22% strike rate, and the 26-year-old had a win over the weekend while riding in Sydney. She has 7 Group 1 wins, but I hope she hasn't sacrificed her chances this year by riding Smokin Romans. Number 20, Tralee Rose, is a 6-year-old mare. She comes into the race off an improved performance in the Caulfield Cup. Though she finished 13th, she was definitely doing her best in the final stages. She's got a good record on soft ground, but has never met a heavy track. She has had a short 3-race prep after taking time off due to an injury she suffered when contesting the Melbourne Cup last year. Last year she went into the Cup as a 20-1 chance. This year she's 50-1. This time she's definitely under the radar. But if she improves further out of her Caulfield Cup run, she may surprise. She has informed jockey Dean Yendall on board. The experienced hand had his last win on the 24th of October at Casterton. His record at Flemington isn't so good. Maybe he can change that on Tuesday. 21, Point Nepean, is crazy. He's another one that likes to lead at breakneck speeds, often to his own detriment. On the bright side, he's only 4.5 years old. Given his expensive bloodlines, connections are looking to preserve his manhood, but if things changed between this guy's ears, he might turn into a very handy horse. He comes into the race off a questionable 2-race prep, both being over 1.5 miles though. Prior to that, he had his career biggest win in the listed Andrew Ramsden over 2,800 metres. That was in May of this year. Based on his last start in the Group 2 Herbert Power, the Melbourne Cup will be a big step up. He's had 2 wins on soft ground, though that was soft 5 as opposed to soft 7. He's got Irish jockey Wayne Lordan on board. Lordan has been riding at better than career average this year and had a great win in the Irish Cesarewitch, steering Waterville to victory from the back of a 30-horse field in rainy conditions. Number 22, Emocean, is an honest 6-year-old mare who made her way into the Cup after a narrow win in the Bendigo Cup. She's a 50-1 shot, but has some good form on rain-affected ground. She's had a 5-race prep, including 1 win at 2,500. Though she won the Group 3 Bendigo Cup at her last start, it was a weak field, and her result in the Bart Cummings against some of her Melbourne Cup rivals is more indicative of her abilities. Countering that is her proven ability on soft and heavy ground. Jockey T.O. Nugent is riding at below his career strike rate, but on the bright side, Emocean is carrying just 50 kilograms. If the track is heavy, you might consider Emocean. Number 23, Interpretation, is a 4.5-year-old Entire. He's an imported Irish horse by Galileo that has had plenty of raps, but to date he's failed to fire. He went okay in the Group 3 Bart Cummings, but had it all his way. Still, Lunar Flare was better by a length. His run in the Geelong Cup was disappointing as well. He has had one win on soft ground, but 0 from one attempt on the heavy. He's going to be jockeyed by Craig Froggy Newitt, who is working at below his career strike rate, and the same goes for his efforts at Flemington, just a little below his usual average. Interpretation has the luxury of just 50 kilograms on his back, but to be fair, jockey Craig Newitt will be making magic if he can get this fella over the line first. Number 24 is Realm of Flowers. The 6-year-old mare has a lot of fans, particularly since that gritty performance in the 2400 metre Metropolitan in early October. She has scraped into the Melbourne Cup field and will race with just 50 kilograms on her back. She's won a 2800 metres on this track, listed level, and she doesn't mind soft or heavy tracks. Looking at her prep, it's been another one of them light ones. Just 3 starts, and she had been away from racing since October of 2021. It will be just over 4 weeks since she last raced with that encouraging run on heavy ground at Randwick. In her last run over 2 miles, she was far from disgraced in the 2021 Sydney Cup when she finished 5th. Realm of Flowers is to be steered by Damien Thornton. He's currently riding below his career strike rate, and his average at Flemington is down at 4% too. This year he's at 0 from 14 starts at the track. His last winning ride was on 20th of October, so he hasn't forgotten how to win, and Realm of Flowers is a realistic chance. Okay, that's all 24 horses. Here are a few tips from out of the Sportsman racing newspaper here in Australia. We have Tony Thomas, Knight's Order with a roughie in Lunar Flare. Adam Sherry has Deauville Legend with a roughie in Lunar Flare. Ray Thomas has Montefilia with a roughie in Stockman. Matt Jones has picked Montefilia with Stockman, his roughie. Neil Evans, don't mind Neil, used to commentate a bit of rugby league I think. Duais is his winner with the roughie Numerian. Myself, I'll put Lunar Flare first because, yep, she has been proven on soft to heavy ground, and she's won at 2500. You just got to get her to step up a little bit further. Her father was a Melbourne Cup winner, Theo Rente. Yes, I've got her first with Knight's Order second. I hope he doesn't get too much of a hard time in front though. Okay, best of luck. Hope you've enjoyed the show and it's been of some assistance. Check the odds, pick a winner.